Hello all. I know it's taken me a while to get vids out. I finished my master's program, and now I'm just trying to get back into the swing of things after my vacation from my job with my family. Many seem to have enjoyed my vids that talked about the American Civil War. Wow, whoa. Alright, well, I guess they like the Civil War stuff. And there was much discussion in the comments over it. So today we're going to look at the utility of flags during the 19th century, with some stories from the war itself. The use of flags or markers is nothing new. Depictions of Japanese soldiers during the 15th and 16th centuries, for example, show them usually wearing a flag on their back, known as a sashimono. This was to help their daimyo or other generals to see where their men were and give appropriate orders based on the situation. Knights and others of old held their heraldry high on banners, serving more to identify who was under the armor, but it also might have helped their troops find out where their brothers in arms were in the heat of the melee. Roman units were never satisfied with one means of recognition, it seems, in that they had several types of public identifiers, like the signums Achilles and the fasces, just to name a few. Each legion would take pride in its image, and often defended its capture to the death if threatened in battle, or would do whatever it took to get it back. These banners, war flags, and other markers often take on great importance as units see action. The standard has become a symbol of the battles that the unit has seen, and all the hardship and victories it has been a part of. New recruits are often taught to, if not already having, immense respect and duty to these standards. The importance of these symbols were so great that soldiers would fight tooth and nail over it. If you succeeded in taking the enemy's flag, it was considered a huge honor to the taker and an extreme dishonor to the loser. For example, in the wheat field in Gettysburg, Colonel Jeffords of the 4th Michigan ran over to pick up his regiment's fallen colors. He was bayoneted, and a fight for the flag was on, killing several men on both sides over its possession, ultimately, however, being taken by the Southern troops. Point is, representation of units has been around for a long time. However, the use of military flags for unit direction and national pride didn't begin until roughly around the later half of the 16th and early 17th centuries, with the Age of Sail. Why is that? Well, I'll tell you. The reason is because kingdoms began to become empires, and more imperial symbols, some of which would help develop later national symbols as well, were needed. For instance, the British East India Company flag inspired the United States flag. The symbols of authority of the home country needed to be represented to newly conquered territory. Regimented and easy to recognize, standardizing several and increasingly specific flag designs would help to begin distinguishing which empire or group you were dealing with, especially on the open seas, and also later on land. You see, ships at the time had many different builds, and like today, had many similar features, especially on the military ships. To make sure you weren't hunting down and attacking your own country, flags, known as ensigns, were essential. If you didn't fly a flag, you were often seen as a potential threat. Pirates even used flags, but more so to strike fear into merchant ships. Aside from imperial and national symbols, pride and authority, flags had a practical use in the time before smokeless gunpowder was invented. When guns became more commonplace on the battlefield, they would leave dense, heavy smoke to fill the air, and if there wasn't a strong breeze, it would often sit there in front of the combatants for a short while. As more units began to use guns in massive firing lines, smoke would make it difficult to even judge direction if the unit began to move. Soldiers could easily get separated too, if enemy artillery or geographic features began to break up the lines. All this combined with the adrenaline and tunnel vision often experienced in combat, it is safe to say that it would be easy to lose one's bearings in the thick of it. Regimental standards, often carried together with the flag of the nation or the empire in question, were used to help soldiers rally and follow their unit. It was a safe bet that wherever the flag went, you were to follow. This of course meant that the one carrying the flag was a huge target for every enemy that could see them, and scores of flag bearers and those immediately around them would receive much of the enemy fire. Sometimes in history, commanders would grab the flags themselves and move forward, hoping to inspire their soldiers. Colonel Porter of the 8th New York at the Battle of Cold Harbor during the American Civil War grabbed the flag after the bearer was shot to lead his men before being hit 6 times himself. His last words, "Guide on the colors," basically encouraging his men to take the flag and continue forward. To be a flag bearer was a great honor, and soldiers were often selected due to their immense bravery. This is often due to the fact that many did not carry a weapon of their own to defend themselves, since 2 hands were usually required to hold the standard. An example of this bravery is Color Sergeant Benjamin Crippen of the 143rd Pennsylvania as his regiment fell back on the first day of the Gettysburg Battle. He would turn at times to shake his fist at the enemy, having no weapon but still wanting to show his defiance to the enemy. He was soon targeted, and presumably went down in a hail of enemy fire, as those in his regiment didn't see him go down, but he was not with them later when the regiment reformed. The regiment's monument on the preserved battlefield today shows Crippen's likeness, still shaking his fist towards the enemy. These stories of bravery often inspire and captivate many people. However, today, we don't have units carrying huge standards into battle. If anything, the flags today are stitched onto their arms, so why did we ever stop using flags in battle? Well, there are several reasons why. One was the invention of smokeless powder in the 1880s. With barely any smoke obscuring your view, generals and soldiers didn't have as much trouble finding their units in the heat of battle, and had an easier time figuring out where they were headed. This is not to say that there wasn't any confusion or chaos anymore in battle, but it was cut down a bit in that it was much easier to see what was happening. Smokeless powder, along with more accurate weapons, also began the slow process of, encouraging soldiers not to stand in big box formations anymore, because now the enemy can plainly see you and you the enemy. And while this lesson did take some time to learn, and tactics like mass charges still went on up until World War I, the practice of hiding behind something when someone started shooting at you started to become the more preferred mode of fighting. Plus, having staggered formations meant that you didn't need to have a big flag to direct troops anymore. As long as you had a general sense of where your guys were and where the enemy was, you didn't need a banner to rally around. Also, around the turn of the 20th century, field telephones began to come into more common use. Now, a commander didn't visually need to see their unit by their flag to make decisions on troop movement and location in battle. They could just call them up to learn the situation. Like swords, horses, and other tools and weapons that have faded from practical combat, the flag standard became purely symbolic, which it still serves in this purpose for many nations around the world. And that's today's episode. I know I included only stories from the American Civil War, and admittedly only ones from the North, but those are the ones that I know well. Are there any stories or famous flag bearers from history that you know of from other conflicts? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and once again, thank you to all my subscribers and those of you here for the first time. As always, you can find me on Twitter, but also Discord, and if you would like to help support the channel, try checking out my Patreon. Thank you so much. I'm Eric the LonePineWolfman, and remember, never stop learning.